All right, so we are recording this webinar. Welcome, Erin Jones. Many of you know Erin. We have had her at a lot of our WASA meetings because she is amazing. I want to introduce myself first. My name is Katie Warren. I'm the Deputy Director at the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECEAP. We do basically advocacy and training for Head Start, Early Head Start, ECEAP, and other early learning providers and parents and directors. And we are really so thankful for all of the staff out there who are helping with this big crisis, and with the parents who are dealing with their families at home and trying to navigate your way through this crisis. And so we are really trying to put together some, online Zoom meetings and webinars and discussion opportunities. Every Monday, we have a COVID-19 Head Start ECEAP discussion that we have. So we had our first one with maybe 60 or 70 people on Monday. It was awesome. And so that we can learn from each other and get updates. We also have a Spanish language story time from Marisela, who is our interpreter and parent ambassador coordinator here on Fridays at 2. So you can sign up for that as well. But today we have the amazing Erin Jones, and I want to welcome her and thank her for doing this for our community, and let's get started.
Okay, well, good morning, buenos dias, everyone, bonjour. Actually, we're in the afternoon now. I've been doing classes online all day today, so this is my 5th one today. So just to give you a little bit about how I'm responding to this, which I know you all will appreciate in some way. You know, I'm a consultant now. I don't work for a district. I don't work for a state agency. I work for myself. And about 2.5 weeks, I started getting cancellations of events. And the first day, I remember my assistant was like, well, we've just had one thing canceled. And then 2 days later, we had 5 things canceled. And then as of a week ago, I had 15 events canceled. And I literally have nothing on my calendar for the next 2 months because people have canceled conferences really through May. So what that means for me is, I mean, maybe some of you are in this space, but I have no work. And when I'm, unlike my husband, who's a teacher, I don't get paid when I don't work. And so I am at home without a paycheck. Fortunately, my kids are adults now. And what I decided on Saturday, I sat at home thinking, I'm not going to be sad about this. We're going to be fine. What can I do to contribute to the world? And I think this is such a great opportunity in a lot of ways to think about how do we become better people. And so on Saturday, I put together a list of things that I felt like I could offer. And I started offering 4 sessions a day online on Facebook Live. So if you're interested in joining me on Facebook Live, every morning from 9:45 to 9:55, I do a read aloud for kids from 3 to 8 years old is what I'm calling it. I'm calling it the littles, but Monday and Wednesday, I am reading aloud in English. Tuesday and Thursday, I'm reading aloud in Spanish. And then Fridays, I'm doing either French or Dutch, maybe some English too. Tomorrow, I'm moving that to the afternoon because I'm doing another webinar like this. But every other day of the week, I'll be online on my LLC Facebook page. So if you're interested in that, I can have Katie send that out to everybody. But I'm also doing an hour every day for adults from 10 to 11 every day during the week on equity and thinking about what does equity mean for you in whatever context you work in. So it's designed really for educators, but it's for anyone who just wants to join. And what I'm finding is people are joining who just need to hear a friendly voice. The reality of being confined to your home is that, you know, not everyone does have kids at home. Not everyone has a spouse. And so There are people joining me
Tell
who are
Yusuf I'm
just
leaving
at
now.
home alone.
Tell him
And
he has a doctor's appointment at
well,
4:30.
somebody needs to be
And
muted, whoever that is. Anyway, but I am finding that people are joining me anyway who just need a friendly voice on the other end of the line. And then every day at 11:30 to 12, I am doing a session for middle school, upper elementary and middle school students on becoming the best version of you. And then from 12 to 12:30 every day, I'm doing a session with high school students on being a change agent in ever-changing times. So just wanted to throw that out. That is my offering to the world. I'm not charging for any of that. I want to just give away in this time when everyone is worried about resources. I want to use what I have to be a gift to other people. So just wanted to start with that. I also want to offer that if you have questions throughout today, I know that there is a tool on your Zoom page where you can send messages. I will just be honest though, right now with my cell phone, it's going to be really hard for me to respond to you that way. If you would be willing, if you could send me a text. I actually have my iPad over here and I have a keyboard that I can respond to. So I'm going to give you my cell phone number. Now, please don't be calling me at midnight, okay? Don't be calling me at midnight now. But if at any point you have questions to ask me throughout this session or even after today, you will now, 100 of you are going to have my cell number. Now, be responsible with my cell number. Don't be giving out my cell number to people you don't know or who don't know me. But here's my cell number, 360-918-3498. 360-918-3498. And I would just offer that as you have questions throughout the session today or later around issues of equity, or you just want to be reminded, what exactly are you doing during the week? Please just send me a message and I can get you that information. But I will also give it to Katie so she can get it out to everybody on this list who's here today. So we're going to talk about equity today. For those of you who don't, yes.
The other possibility is that people can write in the chat and I can tell you the questions.
You're awesome. Okay.
Yes, so that is an option as well.
Yeah, because I have you on a tripod right now. I got this whole setup in my daughter's old bedroom. My daughter's 23 now. I turned her room into my little studio. So I have you all up on. I'm like, how am I going to type and answer the question? So thank you for that. Before I do that, actually, you said that you have a poll for people. Could you send out that poll? She's going to send out a poll, and we want to know who is in the room today. I know there's 100 of you. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. But if you could right now take a moment to let us know who is in the room. What's your role? Who is in the room? Just so that I can get a sense of who I am talking to today. That would be really fabulous. Who is in the room? And while you're doing that, I'm going to read a little poem that I wrote about myself about 3 years ago, right after I lost my election for OSPI, for state superintendent. I was invited to speak at the Martin Luther King rally in Seattle, and I wrote this poem to share at that rally, and it's really a quick way to tell you who I am for those of you who haven't heard me speak. I know most of you probably have, but for those who haven't, as a presenter, as a public speaker, well, especially as a presenter and a teacher, I think it is really important to know who's on the other side of the screen. So when you hear someone do a training for you, it's important to know where they come from and what their perspective is. So I always share a little piece of my story so you understand when I say something, this is where I am coming from when I say this. So here's my poem. It's called Dream, Invest, Love. I sit between two worlds, a bridge of sorts. I am an Afro-wearing biracial woman, red and raced as black, born and abandoned of white mother and black father, adopted daughter of Scandinavian Americans, proud Democrats, the only in either of their families, who knew to raise black children across the ocean in the Netherlands, where race would not be a factor. I am an athlete, 3 sports, 2, soccer and basketball in 12 countries. I am a linguist, 4 languages, English, Dutch, French, Spanish. I am a musician, the writer of over 50 songs. I'm the wife of a Black man, born in the South, raised in Tacoma, a former Division I athlete with 2 graduate degrees. I straddle the lanes, though having run for political office, the first Black woman in this state, in fact, to ever run statewide. I am not political, have never been, until I was forced to pick a side, even for a position billed as nonpartisan. My passion is and always has been for children, and to transform public education to ensure all children, regardless of race, class, language, have access. I am no politician. We have a decision to make in this season of American history. How do we want to be remembered? Do we want to be known as those who responded to hate with hate? If we march and protest, are there action steps to which we are committed? Do we want to be remembered as those who in the most difficult of times were able to bring together a nation, who reached across aisles and zip codes to eat and drink, to learn and listen, who were willing to live in the in-between spaces where lasting change occurs? This is the legacy I hope to leave behind, the bridge that is my life, a legacy of bringing together even what others seek to divide. And that's just a short poem about who I am and why I do this work. Okay, I see that. We got a lot of staff on here. Hey, staff. I see a parent. I see you out there, ECEAP parent. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It's good to know who's on the line here. So we're going to talk about equity, and I am really explicit about talking about racial equity and not just equity in general. Now, I know there are marginalized groups beyond race, but here's why I talk explicitly about racial equity. I do so because I think particularly in Washington State, race is the hardest thing for us to talk about. We will talk about poverty till we're blue in the face. We will talk about LGBTQ plus sexual orientation, gender issues. We like to talk about those for the most part in Washington State, but we hate to talk about race. And I think part of it is we think we don't have a problem around race. We're not the South, we're not the East Coast. We need to do a little more study of our history. We don't like talking about race. And so I am really explicit about starting with the thing that is the most difficult. Because one of the things I found as a teacher, I've been in education for 30 years, if we can learn to talk about the most difficult thing, we can translate that to other things. But if we can't talk about the most difficult thing, we often will struggle with the others as well. And so I am really a firm believer in starting in the hardest place and working our way to other issues. And so I just wanted to start with that. If you wonder why does she stay on race, it's not that I don't think the other things are important. It's that I think if we can get good about being uncomfortable in this place, it'll be much easier for us to adapt and adjust and translate those things into another space. So it's hard, by the way, to be online and not see all of your faces. I am a really great reader of faces and body language. And so this whole online thing is hard because I can't see all 100 of you. I can't see when you're smiling or when you're crying or when you're frustrated. So please work with me here. I'm gonna try to imagine 100 faces out there. So just to know that it's difficult for me too. I don't ever do online training because talking about racial equity is really hard. And if I can't see your face to know where you're at, so we're gonna all have to show each other some grace and mercy here. Is that okay with people? I always talk at the beginning of training about community agreement. So if you've heard of something called norms, you will notice on your screen somewhere, on my phone it was at the bottom right-hand corner, a place where you can put a thumbs up or a clap. So I want you to find that. And I think on my phone it was the bottom right-hand corner. It gives you the option to give a thumbs up or a clap. So if you have ever heard someone talk about norms, I want you to give a thumbs up. If you've ever heard somebody talk about norms, just click on your screen and give me a thumbs up so I can see how many people are, oh, it's on reactions. Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for helping us out. Computers are different than phones, so it's under reactions. So if you could give me a thumbs up, if you've ever heard of the word norms. So if you have meeting norms in your office, I'm not seeing any fingers yet. I'm just gonna wait a minute. I just want to get a sense of how many people have used norms in an office. Those have been used with you in a meeting. I'm still not seeing anything on that. Katie, do you see anything on your screen?
No, I mean, I told you, oh, sorry.
Oh, it disappeared. Oh, that's funny, Jennifer. Never mind. The best laid plan.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
sorry. I don't see it at all on my computer, so I can't help anybody find it.
So you know what? We're not going to do thumbs up because I don't, Jennifer said it showed up and then they do not last long. I mean, I don't even, Tammy, I don't even see it on here at all. Like it didn't even show up on my screen. So never mind. Oh, I see April. She's like, she just typed it in. Yeah, but we're not, it may be under reactions, but we're not seeing it on my screen. I'm not seeing them at all. So, oh, there is Chelsea. Yes, if you type it into the messages, then I see it. But here's, you can just stop. So I get, it's gonna take too long at this point if you type it into messages. So we're not gonna try that. Sad face. We're not gonna try that. But here's what I've been doing on Facebook. When I do Facebook Live, I have people do thumbs up and sad faces and all, and that's how I can see people, even though I can't see their faces. We're gonna forego that today on here. I have just learned on Zoom, it's not quite as simple. But here's why I want to talk about norms. I think that we have this notion often in places that there is a normal way of being in public spaces. And I'm actually going to suggest that it is normal for some people. It is not normal for others. And for people who tend to be marginalized already, the norms are actually not normal modes of behavior. So I have stayed away from talking about norms. I talk about community agreements. And here's some that I use as an example. And usually if I was in a room with all of you, I would put them up and then give you time to talk about them and give me feedback about which ones work for you and which don't. I'm going to suggest in meetings that you do this, that you give people some, and I will send this to you, Katie, so that you can share them with people. Here are my suggested community agreements. No fixing. So here's what people love to do when we talk about equity. Erin, just give me the 3 or 4 things and I'll just go do it. We are not going to fix equity today. Definitely not in an hour. And even if I was with you for 20 hours, we're not going to fix it. Really, in this equity conversation, I just want you to listen and learn. I want you to engage ideas. So no fixing. Take risks. Now on here, I can't see you, and there's not really a way to engage. But I want you to imagine that we were all in a room. And even on here, if you have a question that you're worried, wow, what will somebody think of me? What will Erin think of me if I ask that question? Stop it. There's no judgment here. We're all on a journey. All of us are on a journey. I am not the expert in this. I'm on this journey with you. And so I want you to take risks. If there's a question you wanted to ask for a long time, ask it, please. Because I think the other thing we love to do in Washington State is pretend like we know something and walk around having this thing that we really want to ask or say, but we're so worried about offending people that we don't ask it. And then here's what that happens then. We don't learn. We don't get better. So stop that, stop that, stop that. Take risks. Here's the most important one. Experience discomfort. There's a lot of talk right now, especially at the university level, about something called safe spaces. I actually don't believe safe spaces are good because safe spaces are never safe for everyone. I talk about brave spaces, and I will also send a link to Katie with a really great TED Talk about being brave in this context of talking about equity. I believe all of us need to be uncomfortable if we're going to get at equity. All of us. Believe me, as a Black woman who does most of her teaching and training with mostly white audiences, it is not comfortable to talk about race. It's not. I'm probably more comfortable than most people because it's what I do for a living. But trust me, when I walk into a strange place with 1,000 people in a room and none of them look like me and I've got to talk about race, that is not a comfortable place to be in. So here's what I'm going to suggest to all of us. If it's not comfortable for me, let's also, why don't you own that it's probably not going to be comfortable for you either, and just realize that all of us are on this journey together. speak your truth, but then also realize that your truth and my truth may be two very different truths, okay? And so sometimes I will have people, I'll say something, well, I was treated like this in a store, and they'll say, well, I've never been treated that way, as if now my truth is not my truth. So just listen to people's truths when we talk about equity, and understand that if it's not the same as your story, that's okay. We can have two very different stories that exist in the same place. Last one that I want to share, assume positive intent. So assume the other person has good intentions. However, that being said, if someone says something that is offensive or hurtful to you at any point, it's not going to happen today in our little session, but if we were to be together for hours at a time, someone may say something stupid, even me, maybe me that says something stupid. If someone says something that is hurtful, assume that they meant well, okay? But then when someone confronts you about something you've said that was hurtful, don't get defensive and try to explain yourself out of it. Just say, you know what, I am really sorry that I hurt you. I'm really sorry that what I said was offensive. Just own it. Just own it. We love to explain it away and say, but that's not what I meant, or I was just joking. Stop. Just say, you know what, I am really sorry that that's how that landed on you. Okay, so that's an example of some community agreements. What I would typically do in a big room is I would have you talk through those, which work for you, what do we want to add to that list, and then we as community would make some decisions about what our expectations were going to be. So let's get into it. We ready? We're going to practice a strategy, and I know this is really weird because we're on a webinar, but we're going to practice a strategy that I want you to begin using anytime you walk into a difficult conversation, and it's something called grounding in. And some of you may have already done this before. I practice this a lot with what I do. I do a lot of work in spaces where they've had a racial incident and now I have to go in and help them fix stuff. So I get to be in really awkward spaces a lot with big decision makers. Grounding in is a strategy that I do to get myself grounded, to get myself centered. And I want us to practice this. So wherever you are sitting, I want you to sit up as straight as you possibly can. If you can't sit completely straight, if you got some back stuff going on, that's okay. Sit as straight as you're possibly able to. Get your feet as flat on the ground as you can. Put your hands in your lap or on a table where you're not going to fidget with them. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, I want you to focus on a point on the wall and just kind of hyper focus there. We're going to take 30 seconds of just absolute silence. And I want everything that's been happening in the last couple weeks, everything that's happened today, all the messages you've gotten from families, I want you to just let that go right now. We're just going to take 30 seconds to get ourselves quieted, okay? So I'm going to tell us, we're going to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And I want you to just breathe and focus on the breath coming into your body and going out of your body. And for 30 seconds, we're just going to be absolutely silent. And I'll welcome you back in 30 seconds with a deep breath in and a deep breath out. So please close your eyes, get your feet solidly on the ground, sit as straight as you're able to, and let's get quiet. Take a deep breath in, blow it out. Take a deep breath in, blow it out. That may seem like really touchy-feely stuff, but what I know is if we can learn some physical strategies to help us when we're feeling anxious, it will help us have these hard conversations around equity and inequity, race, culture. And so I don't just want to give you content, I want to give you strategies that you can use. Here's the beautiful thing too. I do those same strategies with students. Now, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old can't stay quiet for a minute at a time like that, probably. But you could practice that for 5 seconds. You could practice for 10 seconds. You could probably get up to 30 seconds with 4- and 5-year-olds. So this is a really great strategy, especially right now as kids are feeling anxious, to just teach them some coping mechanisms and what if we were to model that? What if we were to model that for our students? So anyway, that is a strategy. Let's kick it off now. So in the comment section, I can see comments. I know this because I've seen them now. We're gonna get creative. There are 3 words that I hear often in this work that we tend to exchange as if they're the same word. They're not the same word, and often how we understand them has changed. If you have been in education for over 10 years, these words have changed their meaning over time. But I'm gonna ask, if your last name begins with A to H, I want you to type out, what is a definition? If you were explaining this to a 10-year-old, how would you describe diversity? So if your last name starts with A to H, I want you to describe your own definition for diversity in the comment section. If your last name is from I to M, I want you to, Skittles, I love that. I to M, I want you to give me a definition for culturally responsive practice. Now, if you have never heard that term, just say, I got no idea. Just put that into the comment section, but culturally responsive practice. And for those of you from N to Z, I'd love to hear your definition for equity. And I'm not looking for some Harvard definition, so please don't don't Google it. Just what do you think equity means? So A to H, I want diversity. What do you think diversity means in the context of education? I to M, what do you think culturally responsive practice means? And then N to Z, what do you think equity means? Awesome. Keep typing, folks. Good. I'm glad I can read fast. Awesome. Oh, yes. I'm a speed reader, by the way, so I can see all those. Good. Good. Okay. Well, that was a lot, right, at one time? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. These are great, great definitions. Oh, I like that. I saw learning styles there too. Yes, so it's not just physical qualities that are different. It's learning styles too. So learning, yes. So I don't know if you all can see this. Is it backwards? I can't tell. Is it backwards here? Oh, we're good? Okay. So here is how I tend to define these 3 terms, and I'll send this to you as well, Katie, so that you can add it. But really, in short, diversity is the many ways that we're different from each other. And it could be skin color, it could be language, it could be physical ability, intellectual ability, language. I mean, all the ways that we're different. But here's the danger. What diversity tends to be, it tends to be really superficial. So it tends to, when we talk about education, it tends to be counting numbers. Like I have so many Black students in my class, and I have this many white students in my class. I have this many boys, I have this many girls. And that is not a problem, but here's the thing. If we don't change what we do in that classroom, just knowing those numbers actually does us no good, right? So if we're just counting numbers for compliance reasons, that's diversity. Diversity is also things like this. Diversity could be celebrating Martin Luther King, but then not talking about another Black person ever again. Diversity could be celebrating Latinx History Month, which is great. I'm not saying don't do that, but if that's all we're doing is we're just doing a celebration, we have a multicultural brunch, we're doing the nice things, the fun stuff around honoring people's differences. But here's where diversity then moves down to culturally responsive practice. Once we know who's in our classrooms, once we know who's in the community we're serving, what are we doing to change the service we're providing or how we are providing that service, okay? So diversity is recognizing the differences and possibly celebrating them. Culturally responsive practice is now how are we responding to the reality that we have many different cultures who are in this space and making sure that we're inclusive of those cultures. Now here's the 3rd level, and I'm going to show you a little picture that you probably have all seen at some point. I've actually got 2 pictures of this. So here is a picture of equity. right? It's how do we make sure that everyone has what they need to get access, right? Here's another one that I like to use. I know there are lots of issues with the baseball field, so there might be some of you that don't like, usually when it's just these two, I don't use just these two. I like this one because if you see reality, how many of you know somebody who's got more than they need? I think about all these people buying toilet paper right now, right? They got more than they need. And as I know, because I've worked in colleges, how many times do we have students who've been given everything they need their whole lives, and once they get their first F and we knock that box out, they tumble to the ground? Here's the reality. Even these kids are not getting what they need to thrive. But who's in the hole? When you think about your system, who are the kids that have everything, and who are the kids in the hole? The reality is neither of these groups are doing well. How do we give everybody what they need to thrive? And that's where, for me, my definition of equity, I talk about thriving. I talk about giving everyone what they need to thrive. And here's the other truth. I don't want to give people what they need to survive, because I think too many people are just surviving. I think equity is really, how do we create ways for everyone to thrive? And here's the other truth about that. It's not easy. Equity is really, really complicated. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to figure it out. But I am committed to investing that work and time. So in the last 12 years of working in schools, I have specifically focused on equity. And here's how I think about equity. I think about equity as the center of understanding your personal story, understanding the story of the community you're serving, and then interrogating the systems. What are the ways that the systems are having influence on people? So first, you got to know your personal story. If you don't know your personal story, I don't care what you think about systems, you're always going to see a system through your story. And if you have not taken time to unpack your story, you could try to change a system, but the reality is you will likely change it, even with great intention, in ways that impact our most vulnerable in dangerous ways, if you have not unpacked your own story. So what we love to do in this country is we want to jump straight to systems. We want to jump straight to let's fix the system. But if you have not unpacked your story, how you show up in the work, what are the privileges that you have, what are the lenses through which you see the work and you see people, if you've not really understood who the people are that you're serving, you can't ever make good choices about the system. And so today we're not going to get to much more than your personal story, but I just want to encourage you that there's 3 lenses to this work, or 3 cycles to this work. And the most important one is you. And you understanding your own story, and how have you benefited from education spaces? How have you benefited from systems in this country? Where have you lived? Who have you lived around? Who are the people you're serving? Do you know all of their stories? Do you know where they come from? What their advantages and disadvantages are? How they've been marginalized in certain ways? And then are you willing to really interrogate the system? And that's the 3 cycles of equity. And I will send a short PowerPoint as well to Katie so that you can see some of this stuff in writing, and get some additional resources, because in an hour, there's no way that I can give it all to you. This is really just an introduction. Okay, oh, yes, we're gonna get creative here. Are y'all ready to be creative? So I need you to get out a little scratch piece of paper. So find a scratch piece of paper. Need everybody to have, it could even be like a corner of an envelope. It could be even on your cell phone. You could do this on your cell phone, although you may be on your cell phone watching me. So if you're watching me on your cell phone, don't use your cell phone. Find a corner of a sheet of paper. But here's what I'm going to do. I am going to read a number of statements out loud to you. And I just want you to give yourself a point for each of these statements that is true for you. So if you're not sure if it's true, if you're not absolutely 100% sure, don't give yourself a point. Only give yourself a point if you're absolutely sure. Now, typically I would do this in a circle. So we would stand in a circle so that everyone could see everyone else. I love circles, and I would say that you all in early childhood have got the circle down. You do lots of circle time. I think we think once kids are 5 or older, they need to stop doing circles. I think we as adults need to do circle more often so we can see each other, so we can feel connected. In a circle, there's no one more important than anyone else. It's power. There's incredible power in circle. So imagine we're doing this in a circle. Typically, I would have you raise your hand for each statement that's true for you, but obviously we can't do that right now because you're online. So I'm trying to create a different way to get the same results. So imagine that you're raising your hands. Instead for this, you're just gonna give yourself a check. Each time that you would have raised your hand, give yourself a check. If I were doing this in a school with kids, I have a kid version, by the way. So if you want a kid version, I have an adult version. We're gonna do the adult version today. If I were in a school, I would tell students no talking at all during this. So that's not an issue today, but I just want to tell you how I would typically do this activity. There are about 20 statements. So you're just going to give yourself a check. And at the end, when I've given you the last statement, I want you to total up the number of checks that you have, and you're going to type those into the message bar, okay? So give yourself a check if you have ever had a pet. If you've ever had a pet. Give yourself a check if you live in a house. If you live in a house, give yourself a check. Give yourself a check if you are an only child. Give yourself a check if you have lived in the same city for at least 5 years. Give yourself a check if you lost a family member or a family friend to some form of cancer. Give yourself a check if you lived as a child with both your biological mother and biological father. Give yourself a check if you know someone who's an alcoholic. Give yourself a check if you planned as a middle school student to attend college after you graduated from high school. Give yourself a check if you have traveled outside of this state for vacation. Give yourself a check if you have ever played on a sports team. Give yourself a check if you have at least one living grandparent. Give yourself a check if you have ever traveled outside of the United States. Give yourself a check if you have more than 3 brothers and sisters. Give yourself a check if you have been to see a movie in the last 3 weeks. Now that is going to change quickly. And Netflix did not count here. Give yourself a check if you have ever been to the principal's office. And I did not say because you were bad. Give yourself a check if you have ever met someone famous. Give yourself a check if you worked a minimum wage job at any point after high school. Give yourself a check if you've read at least part of a book in the last 2 months. Now that's the last statement. I want you to total up the number that you have, and I want you to type it into the comment section. So it looks like between 9 and 14. Awesome. So it looks like about 9 to 14, almost everybody. So here's the crazy thing. I've been doing the same exact statements all over the country. So with everyone from very rich people to very poor people. I translated it into Spanish last year and did it with migrant laborers who are in early learning. I did an early learning conference down in Prosser last year, and I did it all in Spanish. And do you know that we have about 80 to 85% of the answers are exactly the same? It doesn't matter where I do it. And here's why. I wish you could see each other in this. Here's why that's crazy, that 80 to 85% are the same, no matter where I do it. we actually have so much more in common than we have different. But because of the stories that we have told about race and class and language, we see people, we assume their story, and instead of jumping to, I wonder what we have in common, our first jump is to, we must be different. And so, you're not like me. So I'm going to suggest that this whole equity conversation needs to start by finding common ground. I absolutely believe that we can't have the tough conversations if it's an us against them kind of context. And so I challenge people to be treasure hunters. So when you meet someone who looks different from you, they talk different from you, instead of jumping to, we couldn't possibly be the same, I actually want you to assume that you have something in common. And that changes the conversation around equity. It changes the conversation around race. So, and it creates a bridge. So equity is really about you understanding your personal story. Now, we all have personal stories. We all have multiple identities. I'm going to show you a picture of different identities. And I want you to, if I can get to it, okay. I want you to look at this picture, and I'm going to ask you to type in the comment section, which of these two identities do you think people judge you most by? So when someone meets you for the first time, which of the two identities, I'm about to show you a list, which of the two identities have the greatest impact on how you think other people see you? Okay, so here is the list. I'm going to read them just for those of you that maybe can't see it. We've got race, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, gender, age, language, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, nationality, abilities, and family structure. So I want you to take a look at these. Which two do you think have the greatest impact on how other people see you? How other people see you? I see a lot of race and age, gender, lots of race, age, gender. Which two? Okay. Wow, ability, yeah, see that? Yeah. Gender, age, race, economics, religious, yeah. Oh, size, yeah. Abilities, yes. Yes. So here's what I'm gonna suggest. Keep going, keep typing those in. We like to say in this state, I'm colorblind. I don't see color. First of all, that's not true. You see color, except for about 5% of the population or less. You see color. It's not the problem. The problem is not seeing color. The problem is the stories that we tell about color. It's not age. It's the challenges of what the are that we're telling about age. It's not hearing an accent that's a problem. It's the stories that we tell about the person with that accent. I'll just give you an example with accents. You know, I grew up in another country, and what I found in the United States is we love our British accent. Anywhere in the United Kingdom or British Isles, Australia, New Zealand, like we idolize those accents. In fact, we love Spanish accents, but we don't love Central and South America Spanish accents. We have written those off. And if you don't think that's true, ask some folks who have accents from Mexico, from Colombia, from Honduras. There are ways that when we hear things in this country as a whole, I'm not talking about us here today, I'm talking about in general, there are ways that people judge. As human beings, we look at those identities. Part of it is a natural reaction to safety. Like we want to protect people. But here's what I'm going to say. If we're really going to do this equity work, first of all, we have to know what are the identities that most form how we think about ourselves. But then also, how do we respond to certain identities? And are we willing to disrupt some of the ways that we have thought about those identities? And so I'll also send a picture of this to Katie so that you all have access to that. I'd love to encourage you over the next few days to really identify how do you shared with me how you think other people judge you. When you think about your own self, what are the identities for you that most inform who you are, who you actually are? And I'd love for you to do some writing. If you want to share it with me, you're more than welcome to. But I want to encourage you to really unpack your personal identities and what those identities mean for you. You know, I will say as a woman, what's interesting growing up for me, I was an athlete. I've been an athlete since I was 5, and I was the first girl to play on the boys varsity soccer team. And to be honest, all through middle school and high school, I didn't have girlfriends. All my friends were boys. I felt much more comfortable on a field with boys than I did with girls. And there was a certain part of me, I wouldn't say I was ashamed of being a girl, but I'd already read them. I'd already seen the messages about girls being less smart or less strong. And so I felt like I needed to be around boys. They were stronger. Over time, your perception of yourself and how you think about those multiple identities that are yours is going to change. I love being woman now. Like, I love it. I love being strong. I love that I can run 5 or 6 miles without stopping. Like, I totally love that. I was not that same person as a young woman. But I've learned over time to just really appreciate who I am. I hated being Black as a young adult. I hated it. I was called the N-word all the time where I went to college. And I learned this self-hate around I hated my hair. I straightened my hair because I hated it curly. Now, as you can see, like, this is just me. This is how it grows. I woke up this morning and did this, and that's as much as I did to get ready. But your identity is going to change over time. I hope it will. And I hope that you will learn to embrace even your disabilities, whatever is perceived as a disability. I hope you'll learn to embrace that we all have abilities and disabilities. And if we could just own them all and just realize that it is each a gift. So each one of us is a gift to the people we serve. In all of our brokenness, none of us is perfect. But if you can begin to really own who you are, but also understand the story that's brought you to this place, it will much better help you to understand now those people around you that you've struggled to understand. If you have not done your own self-evaluation, it is almost impossible to understand someone else's story. Okay. Let's see. So the last thing that I want to do is I want to introduce, there are 3 other terms that I think are really important for us all to understand that we don't talk about well in the United States. And they're race, ethnicity, and culture. And I'm going to end with this. Race is how other people see you based on skin color. So race is not about you. Race is really, it's the stories that we tell about skin color. And I say stories because race is not a scientific thing, it's a created thing. It was created really in the 1600s to first around Black people and who could be slaves, who could not be slaves, who could be owned, who could be property, who could own property. Really this notion of color and race started as a way to distinguish power, okay? Now, a lot of people in Washington State will say, well, if it's a social construct, then why don't we just stop talking about it? Because we have 400 years of stories. We can't just stop talking about it because we have 400 years of stories that we have told around race, that until we have disrupted those stories and dismantled them, we can't just stop talking about race and say it's not a thing. Well, it is a thing now because it's now this bucket of stories that we tell. We still tell stories about Black, we tell stories about white, we tell stories about Asian, we tell stories about Native American, we tell stories about Latinx. Now, they are created stories, and those of you who are mixed heritage, so I am biracial, those of you that have mixed heritages, you know this is not a simple thing, and we don't simply go into 5 buckets, which is why the whole notion of race is icky and complicated. But to just not talk about it is also not a solution. That's not hopeful to not talk about it. We have to be willing to disrupt those stories. But there is no science behind it. So white brains are not bigger than Black brains. All Asian people are not inherently better at math. There's no science to support that. But the danger of America and how that whole conversation has come about is there were scientists who made some decisions and proclamations around race. Absolutely ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But race is important to talk about because now we have all these stories. Now, here's the difference between race and ethnicity. Ethnicity is a nation of origin that you identify with or not. Some of you may have so many nations of origin in your past that you have no idea what your nation of origin is because there are just so many. Some of you may not want to identify with the nation of origin because there's some shame that's associated with it. But I'll just give an example of the difference between race and ethnicity. My parents are white. They would be raised as white. They would call themselves Scandinavian American. So my mother's family, 2 generations ago from Finland, my father's 2 generations ago, Norway. They love America, they're Americans, so they would call themselves Scandinavian American, love this country, but they still practice traditions from the nation of their grandparents' heritage. So that's ethnicity. It's a heritage, a language, a culture, a set of cultural norms that is connected to another place. Or if you're Native American, it's connected to a region here and a people group and a language and all that. So race, how other people see you, ethnicity, how you see yourself. Last word, culture. We all have culture. I have a lot of white people who will say to me, well, Erin, I don't have culture. What they really mean is I don't know my ethnicity. But we all have culture. Culture is the shared norms, shared values, shared kind of rules of the game. It's the way we think about the world. It's the philosophies that we've created when we share space with people. And so guess what? Your house has a culture because you have shared space in a house with people. If you have a school, an early learning, and a daycare, a child care center, that place has a culture that is different from a child care center that's a block away because it's different people sharing space in a different environment. A neighborhood has a culture to it because there is a group of people that have shared space together. Why are those things important? Because what our culture is and what we bring to the table is what we project on other people. So whatever the norms are in your house, you will naturally bring those norms into the workplace. And it's really important that you've taken time to unpack what are the things that are important to you. How do you think about time? How do you think about proximity, like how close you talk? Are you a hugger? My parents are not huggers at all. I'm a hugger. They are not because they're Scandinavian. They just don't do a lot of that warm fuzzy stuff. Cold nose, warm heart. Those cultural norms, absolutely you need to unpack them. And here's how I'll end because I know we are almost out of time. Dominant culture is the culture that drives most things in this country. And dominant culture in this country has been driven by typically white, male, heterosexual, Christian norms. I'm not saying that everything is driven by that, but if you look at broader kind of norms around business, around school and how school operates, time, all of those things, they have been driven by those sets of norms. So here's why this is important. If that's not the set of norms that is normal to you and your context, then every time you come into business spaces, every time you come into a school, you are having to translate all the time. And equity means that every business, every child care center, every school needs to look at its norms and figure out, wow, who are we leaving out? Who are we pushing out with the ways that we're doing business? Who are we asking to leave things that are things about them outside of the doors of this place? So many of our students in the K-12 system are really asked to leave pieces of themselves at the door if they want to be successful in school. Got to be quiet. Got to do your homework every night. Got to be on time to everything. If you're not acceptable. How often are we doing that in business? How often are we doing that in government? We're asking people to strip away pieces of themselves. Equity says, how do we make sure that everyone thrives? And what it means is those things that have been normal for a long time, we probably need to rethink those. And so are you ready to be intentional and rethink those things? So I will end by showing, and if you want to take a screenshot of this, one of the things that I believe is that this work of equity is a marathon. And so I will send this screenshot to Katie as well. But if you want to take a screenshot of it for yourself, it's a marathon. And what that means is you've got to be doing a little bit every day. I run half marathons now. I was a basketball player for 40 years. I run half marathons now. And what it means is I got to do a little bit of training every day. I have come up with a list of books and videos and podcasts to listen to that you could listen to over time. And I'm going to encourage you to take 10 to 15 minutes every day to listen to a podcast, talk to a friend, talk to a coworker, talk to a spouse about what you're listening to and watching. There's not enough training that I can do to get you in the right space around equity. You have to join me in the work, and it means we're going to have to do a little bit every day. You cannot win a marathon or even survive a marathon if you just start training the day before. You got to be willing to get into the gym, out on the running a little bit every day, just a little bit. And that's how we're going to get there together. So I know it is time for you all to go. I apologize for not being able to get on right away at the beginning. But again, if you are interested, I'm reading to littles every day on my LLC. So it's Erin Jones LLC. I will be reading there for the littles every morning at 9:45, except for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm on at 1:30, but I will put that information up on my LLC page. But starting next Monday, I'll be there every day from 9:45 to 9:55. I typically read 2 books to kids. And Monday, Wednesday is English. Tuesday, Thursday is Spanish. Friday will be French or Dutch, whatever the heck I decide to do. 10 o'clock, if you want to continue the conversation on equity every day at 10 o'clock, I am going live on my Facebook page, and you're welcome to join me there for free. Then at 11:30, if you have middle school children or upper elementary, any kids from 8 years old to 13 years old, I'm doing a free live learning with Erin, and that will be about becoming your best self. And then at 12 o'clock every day from 12 to 12:30, I am doing a session with teenagers on becoming change agents in an ever-changing world. If there's ever a way that I can help you, again, my cell number is 360-918-3498. Please check in on my Facebook page. I have a Facebook public page. It's Erin Jones 2016. If you're ever interested in knowing what I'm thinking about around these issues, that is a great place to go. Erin Jones 2016. I write something at least a few times a week. I write about this stuff. So if you want to join and just learn what does civil discourse look like, I've got people on my page that are really right-wing politically, really left-wing politically, everything in the middle, every ethnic background, a number of different languages. So if you want to join us there, please feel free to do that. Thank you all so much for what you do for our young people. Stay strong, stay safe. De nada, Eunice. Yeah, stay safe. Remember, social distancing, it's painful, I'm sure, especially those of you that are used to carrying babies and all that. But just know that for the greater good, this is important. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who attended. As soon as I figure out how to save and post the recording, that's going to be a new, I'm learning a lot of electronic skills now that we have COVID-19 from my couch. I will send you the link and the materials that that Erin has promised here on the webinar. So thank you all.
Unity.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.